Well, Shar asked me to prepare something for some of you who haven't been in on the speech class from the beginning. So this is my attempt to do that, and I think it might be helpful for those of you who have been in the speech class to have this as somewhat of a review. So the question about stage fright is, it's so pervasive. I mean, everybody has stage fright, and if they don't, they're probably too full of themselves to be a very effective speaker in the first place. But you know, some of the articles that are written about stage fright say that people are more afraid of speaking in public than of dying. I kind of think that's silly. I doubt if that is exactly true, but we're afraid of getting up in public. And it's kind of good to think about why we are. I mean, I think one of the reasons that we're afraid is we've seen people do it very well, and we're competitive enough, or we compare ourselves with one another enough to think, well, I couldn't do it as well as so-and-so does it. So that's part of where that stage fright comes from. And I think we think people are going to judge us. But it's been my experience in years and years of coaching and watching speakers and speaking myself that the majority of people that are listening to a speaker really kind of want them to succeed, want them to do well, and get uncomfortable when they're not doing well, not because they are judging them, but because they're in their corner. So that's important to remember, that people are in your corner. And I think we're afraid we're going to forget what we're going to say. So I've got some tips a little later on how to handle that fear of forgetting. And you may have had a past experience where, I'll tell you one of mine. I was giving a speech in high school once, and I had it memorized. And I don't think I realized I had it memorized, but I had a brain glitch and I couldn't remember what was coming up next. And I went out of the room, went to the bathroom, threw up, came back, and asked the teacher if I could start over, and he said, "Have a seat, Jan." So I got an F on that speech, and then later became a speech coach. So I know what stage fright feels like. I still experience it, but I think I can give you some tips that will help you manage it. One of them, too, is think about fear as being fuel. And it can give you energy and enthusiasm if you have a little bit of fear. If you're too relaxed, you don't seem like you care. And that fear can be translated into energy and enthusiasm, which I always say, your audience will have as much fun as you have. So that fear can actually energize you and make it more fun for you to do in a way and make it more fun for us to listen to. So realize that it's normal, that people want you to do well, that rehearsing will help you manage the stage fright. And here's the most important tip that I can give you about speech making, truly, and that is to care more about your audience and what you have to share with them than you care about what they think of you and what you think of yourself. When that's the most important thing, the fear begins to subside. When you prepare well enough, that helps you know what you're doing. You know how it is. That's true with anything. If you are comfortable with what you're doing, you're not as afraid. If you are just starting to learn something, you're just starting to work with it, you're more nervous because you don't know it yet. So just like anything else, practice, I won't say makes perfect because nobody's a perfect speaker. I won't say practice makes perfect, but practice helps. It's also important to figure out how you're going to organize what you're going to say. When you think about what you're going to say, ask yourself this question. What do I want my audience to do, think, or feel when I've finished? That helps you form your focus. You want to have one clear idea. You probably remember from high school hearing you need to have a thesis for a paper. You need to have one clear main idea when you write a paper, and you need to have one clear main idea when you give a speech. And then you're going to want to support that main idea. There are different ways to support it. You may want to do some research. You may want to talk to some other people. You definitely will, if you're giving a speech, want to have some stories. Storytelling is the most powerful support that you can have. As a matter of fact, when brain scans are done of an audience and the speaker, the brain lights up in the same areas in both the audience and the speaker. So they actually begin to sync. So you have a much better chance of reaching your audience's head with stories, because you reach the head through the heart. And if you don't have heart in your speech, you're not going to reach the intellect or the brain of your speakers. Storytelling is probably the best way to do that. So the two most important parts of your speech are the introduction and the conclusion. The conclusion of the two is the most important, because that's what you're leaving your audience with at the end. You've got about 6 or 7 seconds to get an audience's attention. That's your hook. So you want to, sometimes when you're thinking about what you're going to say, you may be writing the body, and then you'll come to something that you think, well, this is really important. You could kind of invert your order and start there to hook your audience, and then kind of back into your main points. So your introduction is important. A good way to conclude a speech is to somehow refer to the hook, the introduction. That kind of bookends it for your audience and gives them a way to remember it. Because words that are said, as you know, are not as easily remembered as words that you see, because you don't have the visual component, and you can't back up. You can't, well, I suppose you could in some situations, but usually you can't tell the speaker, back up, I didn't catch that, like you can in conversation. So having an introduction and a conclusion that are bookends that refer to one another is helpful, and having support for your main idea is vital. When it comes to preparation, you kind of have to do what fits your personality and your work style. So personally, I always write out a speech, write it out completely. I may not stick to that exactly, but I need to see all those words on paper. Not everybody is like that. Some people can speak from an outline. And I have a granddaughter who often just starts talking, and she will talk and talk and talk until she's written her speech in her head. I don't know anybody else personally who does it that way, but she was a state champion in high school, so it worked for her. And you might try a combination of those. That is too what I do. I'll write the whole speech out, then I'll make an outline from that speech, and I'll rehearse from the outline. So those are the ways that I would suggest to prepare a speech: to write it out, to outline it. Some people use something that you can call a storyboard, and rather than a formal outline where you have Roman numerals and letters, just bullet points. I don't think that's quite as effective a way to outline, but that could be the English teacher in me, that I'm kind of used to the old-fashioned way of outlining. But I would say try different methods in preparing and see what works for you the best. See what you can rehearse from the best. One tip that I think is excellent from the aspect of writing out the whole speech is to have someone else read your speech to you aloud. That can be embarrassing if you're a poor speller, and I am. I'm an English teacher who's a poor speller, so I just have to get over that. But when you have somebody else read your speech to you, You can see where they stumble or where they don't quite say it the way you meant for it to be said. And that's a place for you to look to see, okay, maybe I need to change something in there. The second best is to read it aloud to someone else. And when you do, what you want to do is prepare that person by telling them exactly what you want. And if you know that this person is kind of a harsh critic, I wouldn't choose them, first of all. But if they are a harsh critic, say, I'm looking for this. Does it make sense to you? Did I lose you any place? Where were you the most engaged? That is when you're reading it to them, when you're giving the speech to them. You want to do that before you've got it solid, before you've got it memorized or practiced, so that you can make the changes that they suggest. But ask them to kind of give you movies of their mind as you were going through it. Okay? Oh, one more thing. I said that my best tip was care more about your audience and your topic than you care about what people think of you or what you think of yourself. And the second, which is almost as equally important as that one, is to rehearse. I'm amazed at how many people don't realize how much rehearsal and practice it takes. I mean, it's kind of like saying, I don't know how to drive a car if you've never driven a car. It's speech making and performing is just like anything else. It requires practicing it. And you will, as I've said, get more comfortable the more you practice, the more you're going to feel like, I know this stuff. I know how to do this. I've got it. I've got it. Is that going to eliminate stage fright completely? No, but it will certainly help. Well, I'm going to urge you not to ever have a full script in your hands or have it on the podium. Because even if you've got it memorized and you don't have a glitch in it when you rehearse, if you've got that script in front of you and you're in front of an audience, you're going to read it. And there isn't anything much more boring than to hear a written speech from somebody who doesn't know how to handle a manuscript very well, and most of us don't. There are academic papers that are delivered in big conferences where the speaker reads the speech, but they've done it so long and so well that they can still connect with their audience. I don't think it's a good idea for us. Shonda Rhimes, who wrote the script for Scandal and Grey's Anatomy, and I think one other one, when she did a TED Talk, she had a teleprompter, so she read it, but boy, could she do it well. And I just think it's a better idea not to have that script there. If you need something, and probably you will, I've got notes right here. But it would be a good idea for you to have that on index cards and have bullet points or an outline rather than have the whole script written out. You're going to rely on it if you do. Then when it comes to posture, you want to have your feet right under your shoulders and evenly distributed. You want your weight evenly distributed between your 2 feet. That just gives you power and stability. If your feet are too far apart, you're going to look funny, you're going to feel funny, you're going to feel unstable, but you're going to feel even more unstable if you put one foot in front of the other, or worse yet, your feet together. You won't have the power or the stability there, or the comfort that you'll have if your feet are right under your shoulders. Then studies have been done where people listened to speeches and watched them. And do you know that the ones that were thought to be the best were the same ones that people thought to be the best when they turned the sound off? I find that fascinating. The 2 things that those speeches had in common were hand gestures and a smile. Now, maybe you'll have on a mask, but I have coached receptionists in offices before, and I have said, put a Post-it note near your phone that says smile or have a smiley face. because the smile in your voice comes through. So even if you've got a mask on, smile. And when you smile, you're going to be using your eyebrows. You communicate with your eyes. So it's, the Bible says that the eyes are the window of the soul. So if you smile, it's going to come through. That aliveness and that interest is going to come through in your eyes, even if you're smiling behind a mask. So smile, use your hands, have your feet right below your shoulders. So I hope those tips are some tips that will stay with you. Let Shar know if you'd like to have a handout of these notes, and I'd be happy to provide that. But I hope that some of those tips will make it a little bit more comfortable for you to give a speech, and will remind you. As you do it more, they'll be more second nature to you, as they are already to some of the speakers that I've had in class. So good luck.